Well, hello again, traders, and welcome back. This is Ankit from Mavic Currencies here, and this is our quick preview for the ECB rate statement that's due tomorrow at 8:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where they're expected to raise rates by 75 basis points, and again, that follows by the press conference that's due at 8:45. So let's talk about euro, because now we need to focus entirely on euro and talk about possible case scenarios. So let's just study what the euro is up to, so we can start to look at our premise here and see if we want to like it more on the upside or to the downside. So one of the things that we are noticing with the euro is that it's actually very nicely gaining to the upside. So the price action has been on the rise since the mid September to now, and we have seen a nice recovery in euro across the board. And that could be seen when we take a look at euro against its counterparts, like euro Swiss franc. We've seen a nice recovery there. We go into euro dollar, actually broke out above this downtrend. So the euro is actually breaking out ahead of this. Now, this is where I always talk about one of the phenomena that we see in those markets a lot is buy the rumor and sell the news. Actually, this is where we need to kind of take a look at possible case scenario. And one of the things that could really turn things on the upside for the euro is not just this rate hike. It's the forward guidance. And right now, we are definitely in this little moment where we are now seeing the actual central banks are actually coming short. I mean, euro is definitely playing a catch up here. But then if we take a look at what happened with Bank of Canada today, they actually was expected to raise rates by 75 basis point, but they only end up coming with a 50. So they did hike rates, but it came with a dovish statement. So that's not a good sign, especially if you're looking for further continuation. And that's exactly what we had in this Bank of Canada rate statement today. As you can see that the price action was on to the downside. Now, going into tomorrow, the euro is kind of in this little similar pattern here where the euro is actually gaining very nicely. So the momentum is definitely much better in euro going to this compared to the CAD, which was really flat. Now, tomorrow event, again, this is where it's not just about the technicals where it is. I think we can see buy the rumor, sell the news, where we can see this initial price action to the upside, which can immediately pull back to the downside. And if you go back to these previous rate hikes, we don't always get a continuation on the rate hike. And I think that's something we need to watch out for. If there's any sort of pullbacks, I think I would like to buy those pullbacks if there is a nice little pullback tomorrow on the news. But if you are trading this ahead of it, if you are already long the euro going into it, I think right now there's no real exit point. There's no real reason to get out, because taking a look at all this euro crosses, euro dollar is sitting in the top side here. We have the euro Swiss franc pretty much sitting on the highest level there. So everything is really pointing out to further upside. So I think at this point, even though we get a bit of a shorter term pullback to the downside, I think that could be short lived. So it's really depending on if you're okay to sit through those pullbacks, or would you rather jump in after that? I think this is where if you start to look at the pros and the cons here, I think it definitely favors the upside with a little bit of risk on a sort of seeing a pullback on the news, especially if the statement of the press conference doesn't really as hawkish as traders expect to be. So let's talk about what currencies that we need to focus on and what pairings that actually makes a whole lot of sense. So let's start with the dollar. And I think dollar definitely has started to turn some corners over here. As you can see, the price action actually started to move more to the downside. So we're now seeing back-to-back losses in this dollar here, which is again a bit of a regime change as we go back to August. Where we were back in August and where we are right now, there's a huge change. We go from August lows to the current level. We are still sitting at 7.5% gain on the currency basket. So there's definitely a lot of the price action is kind of already built in. We're now making a lower. We actually closing before this previous low, lower high there, and now we're making a lower low, which is again, I would love to kind of see a bit of a bear rally to short into. So the 50-day moving average is quickly approaching, and I think that's where the dollar can find some sort of short-term footing. But the dollar looks definitely in the short term, it definitely looks like it wants to go lower. as we go into the time frame 4-hour chart. I mean, right now it's actually giving up that momentum here. So momentum looks pretty weak, as you can see, sitting at the lows of the day. So at this point, not a whole lot of buying coming into it. I think the dollar is looking short until it really has a sort of a bounce. The yen, on the other hand, is actually kind of holding in here. So it seems like if you take a look at dollar yen cross, the dollar has definitely taken a bit of a toll here. And as you can see, where we got the intervention, and I know this is where a lot of traders were looking at September, and expecting the similar price action, where the initial intervention didn't really affect the dollar overall. Right now, we are seeing actually dollar weakening against yen. So at this point, again, dollar seems to be a better short, but there's always, again, if there's anything changes, we'll make our adjustment to our outlook. But right now, the dollar seems to be pointing more to the downside, along with the Swiss franc. I think Swiss franc is also in a slow bleeding environment. I mean, we are now slowly giving up this 50-day moving average. It's just hanging off the thread here in the last 4 trading sessions. It really hasn't broken that today but it's still a lot of wicks around this. So I still like Swiss franc to the downside. Nothing materially has changed. So this is where, the traditional places where the money was going is no longer going. So where's the money going now? I mean, clearly euro is where the money's going. Pound is where the money's going. Now let's talk about growth currencies. Now, Canadian dollar, I like it further on the short side. I talk about this in yesterday's Bank of Canada preview, and I like the further downside in this, especially as the dollar is weakening. I think that will take the Canadian dollar with it. Now, with this dovish Bank of Canada rate statement today, I think we can expect a little bit more further downside in the CAD, which again makes a bit of a choice to make. Now, Aussie and Kiwi, as you can see, has a very nice bounce. And again, this is really where all the worst performing currencies are getting a lift. That's what really is happening in the markets here. And as it continues, I think that's the kind of play will continue in the markets. So if you take a look at now euro, I think it's pretty clear if you want to pair euro on the long side, that we can see euro against the Swiss franc. This is again one of the setups that I've been talking about since it broke that 198 level, and it's sitting at 99.37. So there's a nice 30 pips that's sitting in its gains here. I think at this point it still have a decent chance to easily claim this parity level. So right now there's still a 60 pips away from that level parity. I think we saw with the euro dollar is now above the parity level as well. With this little push to the upside, I think we can still see the similar thing with the euro Swiss franc. So I like the euro Swiss franc to the upside, euro dollar to the upside. That still looks like a decent play to me, especially after it's coming off this downtrend that has been in place starting February. I mean, we haven't been really above this 50-day moving average, so this is a critical break here. Now, taking a look at other currency pairs, what about if the euro is actually weak? In that case, we can pair euro against pound. I mean, pound is showing relative strength here. Look at the daily chart. We got a nice little bear rally. We're sitting right at the 50-day moving average. So if it breaks below that, the euro pound actually looks like a decent shorting opportunity on the euro weakness. So I like that on the euro weakness. Now, taking a look at euro against other currencies, we actually kind of missed another euro long, which is against the CAD. You can see I talked about this yesterday as well. The setup is looking nice, and we actually now broken above this 200-day moving average as well. So we are now above the 2050 and the 200. This is, again, a bullish sign. I mean, if you go back in time, we haven't really been, especially in this Euro CAD, we haven't really been above this 200-day moving average going back to February of 2021. So this is a critical break on Euro CAD. I like it further on the upside. It all depends on what's the time frame you're picking, how long you want to hold this trade for. I really like Euro CAD here on the upside. Now let's get back into what we like euro against on the short side. We can actually take a look at euro yen. I mean, right now, again, yen is kind of holding in there, but again, against the dollar, it's kind of leaving its ground. Yen is the one that's been tricky play. I haven't really picked yen for anything else, but again, something we can keep an eye on if the yen strengthens. We can take a look at euro against the Aussie. I mean, this one, again, if you take a look at it, it's kind of nice in this uptrend here. But again, 20-day moving average is kind of providing a support. If the euro comes out weaker tomorrow and the continuation stays in this Aussie and Kiwi strength, but then we can see this 20-day moving average kind of give up there. And same thing for Euro Kiwi. We'll like to give up that level as well. So again, it's pretty clear on what we want to focus on. Now, question is, what's the premise? You know, do we like Euro on the upside or to the downside? I mean, I personally still like Euro to the upside, but we can have a shorter term pullback on the news. And again, I think that could provide a decent buying opportunity. So I won't be surprised initially we get a nice little upward move off from this level, and we continues to kind of move up this level. And then we get a bit of a test. So we'll be watching this tomorrow live in the class. It's scheduled for 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you register for that class to get the link. And then we'll be meeting live for that and taking a look at it. So at this point, like I said, if you're riding the Euro trades, just use the stops, use the moving averages to kind of guide you through it. If you're looking for a new position on the news, then I think what you need to wait for is not the 8:15 a.m. Announcement, but I think the better environment will be for around the press conference that starts at 8:45. So till then, take care, happy trading, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Cheers.